Alrighty. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Really appreciate you coming and being on time. Looking forward to diving into the material with you today. Let's just give it a little bit more time. I see there's more people entering the room, so just a few more moments and we will kick off. Amazing. Thank you all for coming. Okay. Almost there. All right. This is good. Very good. Amazing. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. We're going to be talking today about should you leave federal service early? I know you're thinking about it. Yep, I know. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm excited to share with you material. But before I dive into the material, I first want to give my shout out like I always do. I recognize that these webinars, they don't happen in a vacuum. They happen because I have people that are supporting me and encouraging me. Those are my clients. Those are my members. If you know a client or a member, go ahead and give them a hug from me. And if you too want to be a client or a member, I will tell you how to do so at the end of the class today. Without further ado, let us dive in to today's topic. Should you leave federal service early? Now, what do I mean by early? Because there are different ways you could leave federal service early. So today I want to talk about 3 ways you could leave federal service early and whether you should do that. The first way is deferred retirement, which is basically means that you're going to be leaving federal service before you are eligible for an immediate pension. In other words, quitting. So deferred retirement equals quitting. Should you quit federal service? We're going to talk about that. The next early retirement is MRA plus 10. We're going to have to explain what that even means. Some of you guys don't even know what the words MRA plus 10 even mean, so we're going to get there. And then there's something called VERA, Voluntary Early Retirement Authority. Basically, when OPM gives your agency the permission to let people retire early. So there are a few ways to get out early. And let's start with the deferred retirement, also known as quitting. Should you quit federal service? Now, let me just point out a couple of things. If you leave federal service, I first want to differentiate between somebody who has 5 years of service or more versus somebody who has less than 5 years of service. If you have 5 years of service or more, you could actually leave federal service and you could get a pension at some point in the future based upon those 5 years or whatever it is that you have. Once you reach 5 years, you've reached what I call the critical mass. You are vested in some form of federal pension. So once you reach 5 years, even if you leave federal service, you could get a pension at some point in the future. But somebody who has less than 5 years of service, if you leave federal service, you will not get a pension in the future. So just be aware, if you have not yet reached that 5-year mark, you are not yet vested in a federal pension. So as you can see on the side, somebody who has less than 5 years, they're not going to be eligible for any pension. Somebody who has at least 5 years of service and they quit and they leave federal service before they're eligible for an immediate retirement, they could get a deferred pension, which means that they're not going to get the pension immediately. They're going to get a pension at some point in the future. When I say at some point in the future, what point is that going to be in the future? So you see in the bottom of the slide, if you have only 5 years of service, you can get it at the age of 62. That's the bottom bullet point. If you have 10 years of service, you can get it at either age 60 or MRA, minimum retirement age. Also, you'll notice that if you're age 60, you can even retire with 20 years of service. Although if you leave federal service before the age of 60, so for example, let's say somebody is age 45, they have 20 years of service and they leave. They can get a pension at the age of 60. And then finally, if a person has 30 years of service, and they leave before MRA, which I don't know why you would. Once you've already done 30 years of service, you've done your sentence, you've done your time. You might as well just wait it out to the very end. I know, although I have met some people that are so disenchanted, let's just say it nicely, from working with the federal government that they want to leave at all costs. They want out. So you could leave early. So my point of view here with this slide is just to differentiate that somebody who has less than 5 years of service, if you quit, you will not get a pension in the future based upon your service. However, somebody who has 5 years of service or more, you can quit and you can receive a pension in the future. Now, that future pension, just be aware, that future pension will not include any unused sick leave. So if you have a whole balance of sick leave, that's not going to get counted towards your future pension. Also, if you quit, yes, you get a pension in the future, but you will not be able to continue health insurance nor life insurance. So you're not going to have FEHB, you're not going to have FEGLI. Now, FEGLI, that's not a big deal. Who cares? Okay, maybe at another time I'll explain why it's not really such a big deal that you lost your FEGLI. But FEHB, the health insurance, that is a sweet deal. So somebody who leaves federal service early, yes, you can get a pension in the future, but you will not be able to preserve your FEHB. Lastly, on this slide, you could withdraw your first deposit. So if you quit, if you really wanted to, you could actually withdraw your first deposits into the system. So when I say first deposits, some of you are paying, or every one of you are paying into the FERS retirement system every pay period. Some of you are paying 0.8%. Some of you are paying 4.4%. Those contributions into the FERS retirement system, if you quit, you could actually withdraw those contributions out of the system without interest, of course. If you withdraw those contributions out of the system, you will not be able to get a future pension based on that time, unless you redeposit those contributions. And you can only redeposit if you return to federal employment. Okay, so definitely a consideration if you're going to be quitting and leaving federal service. Should you leave your money in the system? In general, I probably would tell you yes, especially if there is a small possibility that you're going to return to federal service. I'll just tell you to keep it in the system. However, let us think about this big decision, whether you should quit federal service and go elsewhere. I get this question very frequently. I'd probably say once a month even. I get this question. I have people saying to me, Stefan, I could get a job in the private sector, and the private sector job would pay me more than my federal salary. But Stefan, is it worth it to leave federal service to take that job in the private sector? Or the way they phrase the question is as follows. Stefan, how much more would that private sector job have to pay me in order to justify leaving behind federal benefits? Because I hope you understand that if you leave federal service early, if you quit, you are walking away from some very generous federal benefits. Let me try to enumerate and calculate for you how much your outside job would have to pay you just to make up for all the benefits that you're leaving behind. So let me turn to the next slide. If you're going to be working in the private sector, the first thing you have to investigate is, will that private sector job offer you a 401k match? So if they offer you a 401k or a 403b or a 457, whatever the plan is that they offer, are they offering a match? Now, there are plenty of employers that do provide a match, but most employers don't provide a match. So if your new employer is not providing you a match, what do you think they need to do in order to make it worth your while? They're going to have to increase your compensation to make up for the loss of the TSP match. For those here in the federal retirement system, in the FERS retirement system, not CSRs, but in the FERS retirement system, you get a 5% match on your TSP. So if your new employer is not giving you a 5% match, they need to raise your compensation by at least 5% just to make up for the loss of the 5% match. That's the first benefit you're walking away from. So if you leave federal service and you go to the private sector and they're now offering you a match, they need to raise your compensation by at least 5%. That's number one. Number two, FEHB. Does your new employer offer you health insurance? And even if they do offer you health insurance, will they offer you health insurance in retirement? Most employers do not offer health insurance in retirement. That's a big deal. So if your new employer is not offering you health insurance, you're going to have to buy your own health insurance. Now, do you know how much health insurance costs? I know you guys think you know what it's cost because you're paying for your health insurance every pay period. You're paying towards the FEHB premiums. But I think you're also aware that the amount that you are paying towards FEHB is not the full cost of FEHB. No, no, no. You're only paying like 30% of the cost of your FEHB. The government is paying about 70% or 75% of what you're paying towards FEHB. So if you want to know how much health insurance would cost if you didn't have the government contribution, well, you could take what you're paying, multiply that by about 3, and that is what the government is paying. So if your new employer is not providing you with health insurance, you're going to have to buy health insurance on your own, and you're going to have to pay your portion and also the government portion. Let's do some quick math for that. Many of you are paying for your FEHB. It depends whether you have a self-only plan or a self plus one or a family plan. Let's just give an easy number. Let's say you're paying about $5,000 a year for your health insurance. That's your portion. The government portion is about $15,000. So if your new employer is not providing you health insurance, they have to increase your compensation by at least $15,000 in order for you to be able to afford your own health insurance plan. So, number 1, TSP match. Number 2, FEHB premiums. Those are big, but guess what? Relatively speaking, they're actually small compared to the biggie. There's one big benefit that if you quit, if you leave federal service, you will be leaving behind a massive benefit. What's that massive benefit? The federal pension that you could have been growing. Now, remember, if you have 5 years of service and you quit, you could get a pension based on those 5 years of service. Yes, you can. But what you're walking away from is the future years of service that you could have added to your pension. Let's give a couple of examples on the next slide. Okay. Imagine a person was planning on working another 10 years, and they have to decide, I can either work the 10 years with the federal government, or I could work the 10 years in the private sector. If I work 10 years with the federal government, that will add 10 years to my federal pension. What's that worth? So for those who don't know, if you're in the FERS retirement system, for every year of service, you get 1% of your high 3 average salary. So if you work 10 years, you get 10% of your high 3 average salary. Assuming your high 3 average salary is going to be, let's ballpark it, $200,000. And where did I get $200,000 from? Well, let me explain myself. Right now, if you're at the top of the pay scale, let's say you are a GS 15 step 10 equivalent, and you're in the DC metro area. Let's just give that as an example. So if you're GS 15 step 10 in the DC metro area, your salary right now is about 180 something, 183, whatever the number may be, 180 something. And that's what it is right now. 10 years from now, $200,000. Pretty simple. Even with just a 1% increase, you'll be there. So 10 years from now, it's very, very possible you would have a high 3 average salary of $200,000. And again, 10 years would give you 10% of the $200,000, which is a $20,000 a year income stream. So if you quit federal service and you go to the private sector for the next 10 years, you're walking away from an additional $20,000 income stream that you could have gotten as part of your federal pension. If your new employer is not providing you with a $20,000 pension, which, by the way, they will not provide you with a $20,000 pension because almost no employers provide pensions anymore. Most employers have no pensions whatsoever. So if your new employer is not providing you with a $20,000 pension, what they need to do is they need to help you save up enough of your own money so that you on your own can recreate a $20,000 income stream. Does anybody here know how much money of your own would you need to safely recreate a $20,000 income stream? So this is known as the 4% rule. Okay, this is a well-known rule. You guys can look it up. The 4% rule, there's a number of studies that were done, and the studies show that if somebody has a pool of money, let's say their portfolio, and they want to draw income from that pool of money in a way that is statistically going to last them for the rest of their life. So I'm sure you guys know this, that if you have a portfolio, and let's say your portfolio is worth 100%, whatever the value is, whether it's 500,000 or a million or 2 million, whatever your portfolio is worth, that's 100% of your portfolio. So I'm sure you realize that you can't pull out 100% every year and live on that money, because if you pull out 100%, you'll be out of money after just 1 year. And if you take out 50%, you'll be out of money after 2 years. And if you take out 10%, you'll be out of money after 10 years. So if a person is withdrawing a percentage of their portfolio, they can't withdraw 100, they can't withdraw 50, they can't withdraw 10, because they will run out of money. Is there a withdrawal rate that is statistically safe? It's not guaranteed, but is there a withdrawal rate that is statistically safe, that you could actually draw income and your money will statistically last you for the rest of your life in retirement? And the answer to that question is, based on studies, yes. It's called 4%, the 4% rule. If you are withdrawing from your portfolio 4%, so that your portfolio should be able to provide you an income stream for the rest of your life. Is it guaranteed? No, it's not guaranteed. However, it is statistically relatively strong. Okay, so once again, we're trying to recreate a $20,000 income stream. If you want to recreate a $20,000 income stream on your own, because again, your new employer is not going to give you a $20,000 pension, so how much money on your own would you need in order to recreate a $20,000 income stream? Well, once again, if you use the 4% rule, you could just measure $20,000 is 4% of a larger portfolio. Doing the math, if you guys can see on the board, you take the number $20,000, you divide it by 4%, which is 0.04, and you have to have a portfolio worth $500,000. That means if your new employer is not giving you a pension of $20,000 a year, which they are not going to, they need to help you build a portfolio that is worth $500,000. And again, this is over a 10-year period of time. So if you do $500,000 divided by 10 years, that means they have to raise your compensation by at least $50,000 a year. This way, after 10 years, you have accumulated $500,000. So let's add it all up. They need to raise your compensation by $50,000 just to recreate the pension. They need to raise your compensation by 5% just to recreate the TSP match, and they have to increase your salary, your compensation by $15,000 just to recreate the health insurance premiums. Add all those things together: 50,000 plus 15,000 plus another 5%. Doing the math, that's going to be about $75,000. Using my numbers, using my assumptions over here. That means your new employer will have to pay you not just your salary, they'll have to pay you $75,000 above your salary so that you could recreate on your own the federal benefits that you're walking away from. They don't call it golden handcuffs for nothing. So that was one example on the left-hand side of the slide. Let's look at the right-hand side of the slide. Imagine a person, instead of having 10 years more to work, they were planning on working 20 years. So if you work 20 years, you get 20% of your high 3 average salary. Again, using a 200,000 high 3, which I really shouldn't. I really should use higher than 200,000 because now we're talking 20 years. But let's just use 200,000. 20% of 200,000, that's $40,000. So if your new employer is not going to give you a $40,000 pension, they need to help you create your own pool of money so that you could safely withdraw $40,000 a year. Using the 4% rule, 40,000 is 4% of what number? $1 million. And again, you have 20 years to build this $1 million portfolio. So $1 million divided by 20, once again, $50,000. $50,000 is what they need to recreate the pension, plus health insurance premiums, plus TSP matching. Once again, they're going to have to raise your salary by about $70,000, $75,000. And by the way, the higher your average salary it is, the more they're going to have to compensate you. And also, let me remind you, if you are eligible for the 1.1% computation, then they're going to have to raise your salary some more. I remember doing this exercise for one of my clients. One of my clients was being poached by a Fortune 500 company. He was being poached to become an executive at a Fortune 500 company. And he understood that if he leaves federal service, he's leaving behind the potential pension growth that he could be achieving. And he was a senior executive with the federal government. So I did the math for him, and he had to have a salary that was higher than his current salary by $150,000 or whatever the number may be. When you factored in the TSP matching and the pension and the health insurance, my goodness. As I said, they don't call it golden handcuffs for nothing. But you know what? Let me ask you an honest question. Who says you have to leave federal pension just to find your fill on the outside? Why can't you find your fill on the inside? I know plenty of people that are federal employees and they are quietly building their own special practice on the side. Obviously, it has to clear ethics and it has to be as kosher as possible. But I know some people, the most quiet and unassuming people, that are building empires by their federal desk. I'm not joking about this. I know some people that run a fleet of rental properties. And it started off very small. It started off that they had one rental property. And then a few years later, they got a second. And then a few years later, they got a third. And then they keep on adding to their portfolio. And then they're managing 5 or 10 properties. And they're pulling in rental income of $100,000 a year profit. And this is just what they built from the side, on the sidelines. This is one, it wasn't interfering with their federal job. I know other people that became consultants. And again, it started small. They on the weekends, they got themselves one client, and then they took on a second client in the evenings, and then a third client, then a fourth client, and then they have multiple clients. And again, they have a tremendous income stream from that second job that they're doing alongside their federal careers. So who says you have to leave federal service in order to get your fill? Maybe you could do it right from your federal desk. Up until now, we've been talking about what happens if you quit federal service. Let's talk about the other ways you can leave federal service. So one of the ways you can leave federal service early is something called MRA plus 10. MRA, does anybody know what MRA stands for? Minimum retirement age. Minimum retirement age for most people in this room is probably going to be age 57. If you are MRA, you usually need 30 years of service to retire with a full pension. That's the usual requirement. Somebody who's MRA 57 needs 30 years. However, there is a way you can get out early. It's called MRA plus 10. You still have to be MRA, minimum retirement age, but instead of having 30 years service, you could retire with just 10 years of service. What's the difference between MRA and 30 versus MRA plus 10? Well, here's the difference. If you do MRA with 30, minimum retirement age with 30 years, you will get the full pension immediately. No questions asked. However, if you choose MRA plus 10, which means you're MRA and have a minimum of at least 10 years of service, well, you can retire, but when you retire, they're going to ask you the following question. Would you like your pension to start immediately, or would you like to postpone your pension? If you start your pension immediately, there will be a penalty, a permanent reduction. What's the penalty? What's the permanent reduction? It's going to be a 5% per year reduction for every year that you were under the age of 62. So that means if somebody is MRA, and for many of us, MRA is 57. If you're 57, that means you are 5 years under the age of 62. And remember, the penalty is 5% for each year. So 5% times 5 years, that's a 25% reduction. If you don't want to have that reduction, you could avoid the reduction and you could postpone your pension to a regular retirement qualification. So for example, if you have 10 years of service, you could postpone it to the age of 62, because at the age of 62, you could retire with 10 years of service. The truth is, at the age of 62, you could retire with just 5 years of service. But if you want to leave at MRA and be eligible for an immediate pension, you have to have MRA in 10, and then you can retire to MRA with those 10 years and postpone your pension to the age of 62 and avoid any reduction, any penalty. So let me run through the options again. There are really 3 options, but in this class, I'm only talking about 2 of them. The 3 options are as follows. Number 1, you can retire MRA plus 10 and take an immediate pension with a reduction. That's option number 1. Option number 2, you can retire MRA plus 10, and instead of taking the immediate pension, you will postpone the pension, and this way you will avoid the penalty. That's option number 2. There is a third option, which I'm not really speaking about in this class. The third option is Just don't retire. Just stick it out. So I'm not going to talk about that third option. That third option, I'll just say, is going to be the most beneficial option. You will walk away with the most in federal benefits if you decide to just stick it out and continue working. But this class is talking about leaving early. Should you leave early? So if somebody is MRA and they have 10 years of service, or at least 10 years of service, you can retire at MRA with just 10 years of service. However, you have to make a decision. Should you take the pension immediately with a penalty, or should you postpone the pension? Well, let's do some math. Imagine a person retires at MRA, age 57, and they have 18 years of service. And let's just say they're going to get 18% of their high three. So let's just say their pension would be $18,000. That's the full pension. Let's just assume that was the full pension. However, this person, if they're leaving MRA plus 10, they are not going to get the full pension if they take it immediately. They're going to get a 5% reduction for each year they're under the age of 62. So doing the math, as you can see on the slide, 62 minus 57 of age, they are 5 years away from age 62. And remember, there's a 5% reduction for each year. So 5 years times 5% reduction, that's a 25% reduction. So instead of receiving $18,000, their pension is going to be reduced by the 25%. So that means it's going to be reduced by $4,500. They're only going to receive $13,500. So here are the options. You could retire immediately and get $13,500, or you could retire immediately and postpone your pension and get $18,000 at the age of 62. Now, obviously, if you wait until the age of 62, obviously you'll get more money. You're going to get $18,000 as opposed to $13,500. That's obvious. And obviously, if you do MRA plus 10 with the immediate pension, you're going to get less money. Instead of getting $18,000, you're only going to get $13,500. So obviously, if you take it right away, if you take it immediately, then it's going to be less money. That's obvious. But it's less money for more time. Is that worth something? Is less money for more time worth it? Well, actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because I want to point out something that everybody here should be aware of. Postponing your pension is not free. It costs you money. It does? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. What does it cost you? Who knows what it costs you? So it costs you the money that you could have been receiving. You could have been receiving $13,500 during that period of time that you postponed. So, for example, from the age of 57 to 62, you were postponing, you were receiving nothing. You could have been receiving $13,500. So that's what it cost you, $13,500 a year. But it's not just for 1 year, it's for those 5 years. So let's go to the next slide. The cost of delaying. $13,500 times 5 years, that's $67,500. You could have had $67,500 in your hands. And you could have done whatever you wanted with that money. But you decided, nah, I'm just going to postpone, Stefan. I'm going to give OPM my $67,000. Here, OPM, here, take my $67,000. Why in the world would you give OPM $67,000 of your money? Oh, because they're going to give you more money, right? How much more money? Oh, $4,500 more. When I say $4,500, that's the difference between the $18,000 and the $13,500 is $4,500. So you gave away $67,500 just to get $4,500 a year more in your pension for the rest of your life. Let's do the math. $67,500 divided by $4,500. It's going to take you 15 years just to get back the money that you gave to OPM. 15 years. That means if you decided to postpone to the age of 62, 62 plus 15, that is 77. That's when you finally break even. Meaning, if I say in other words, meaning you got zero benefit from this postponement. You got zero benefit from the age of 62 to 67, zero benefit. It's only once you reach the age of 67, that's when you start seeing a rate of return, so to speak. But that was a 15-year break-even point. And by the way, when I say it's a 15-year break-even point, the truth is it's actually more than 15 years. I'll tell you why. Let me back up a couple of slides and point this out. If you postpone your pension, look very carefully at the wording. If you postpone your pension, you will have no insurance coverage. No insurance coverage means no FEHB and no FEGLI. But let's talk about the FEHB. If you postpone during those years of postponement, you're not going to have FEHB. That means you're going to have to buy your own health insurance. And remember, buying your own health insurance is going to be expensive. It's going to cost you the government portion. And remember, if the government portion is $15,000 a year, well, let's do the math. You'll also, at the very bottom of this slide, you're going to lose the cost of health insurance for those 5 years. So that's 15,000 times 5, that's $75,000. So you didn't just give away 67,500, which is what the math was before. You didn't just give away that. You also cost yourself. You incurred the additional cost of 75,000. So 67,500 plus the $75,000 of health insurance premiums that you incurred upon yourself. That's $142,000 that it cost you to postpone. Why would you cost yourself $142,000 just for what? Just to get back $4,500 a year? My goodness, it's going to take you 31 years to break even. 31 years. By the way, if you guys are paying attention, this type of thinking may remind you of the thinking we had last webinar when we spoke about Social Security. With Social Security as well, you could postpone Social Security. Instead of taking it at 62, you could delay till 67 or 70. And if you delay, you'll get more money. And if you take it early, you get less money, but it's less money for more time. And that is worth something. Remember, postponing Social Security and postponing your federal pension is not free. You're giving away money, and it's going to take you quite some time just to break even. So, just so you guys know, in general, when one of my clients asked me if they should choose MRA plus 10 with the immediate pension or MRA plus 10 and postpone the pension, I'm going to encourage them to take it immediately, just like I did with Social Security. Okay, that's the second way of retiring early. There is a third way of retiring early, and that is a VERA, Voluntary Early Retirement Authority. Basically, your agency has to contact OPM and ask them for permission to let people retire early. If your agency does not ask for this permission, then it's not going to happen. Okay? And by the way, most agencies don't ask for this permission frequently. This is something that happens very infrequently. I hope. I hope. Meaning, if you work for an agency, you would rather that the agency offer these outs infrequently as opposed to very frequently. The more frequently your agency is offering early outs, the more dysfunctional they are. I'm being very serious. If you want to measure whether your agency is functional or dysfunctional, you can measure it by just looking at how often they offer these early outs. I know there are some agencies in the DC metro area that offer early outs multiple times a year. I can think of a couple of them that for the past 9 or 10 years, they have just been offering multiple early outs a year. Super dysfunctional. The morale at those agencies is super low. But the perk of working at those agencies is that you may find yourself frequently encountering early out opportunities. So if there's anybody here who actually wants the opportunity to retire early, maybe you should try to get yourself hired by a dysfunctional agency. And this way you'll have the option to retire early. How early is the early out? So as you guys can see on this slide, you can retire at the age of 50 with 20 years of service, or you can retire any age with 25 years of service. One of my clients did this. One of my clients, age 47. They started working for the federal government straight out of college. 47 years old. They had 25 years of service. The agency announced an early out, and they said, I'm out of here. They retired 47. Now, let me just tell you the rest of that story. They were not able to afford retirement at 47. No way. However, while they were federal employees, they were networking with outside employers. And this client found an outside employer that said to them, listen, whenever you're ready to leave your federal job, let us know. We'll have a position waiting for you. So the day came that the agency announced an early out, and she called up this new employer. The new employer said, come on down. We have a position waiting for you. So she left federal service, was collecting her pension, and then she was getting hired by this new job and making a new salary. And think about this. She was making new salary, and on top of the salary, there's the federal pension. She didn't need the federal pension for her lifestyle. She was able to get by on the new salary. So the federal pension was all just excess money, which she was able to pay the taxes on, of course, because you're going to have to pay tax on your federal pension. She paid the taxes, and whatever's left over, she invests that money. We did the math. Had she stayed a federal employee, she would have to wait until MRA 57. But now that she left federal service and she's getting the pension and she's reinvesting that money, she could retire at 54. Amazing. That's very, very impressive. That's very, very impressive. Now, the advantage that this client had was that while they were federal employees, they had already started networking. They were marketing themselves. They were putting out resumes, having interviews. So if you want to have this opportunity, if your agency offers an early out and you want to be ready to jump on that opportunity when it offers itself, you probably need to start marketing yourself now. Okay, this way, when they announce the early out, you don't start fumbling and struggling to make this decision. You already have your numbers and your new job lined up for yourself. But again, do you really need to leave federal service? Maybe you could get your fill at your federal job. And even if your job is not giving you the fill, maybe you could create your fill alongside your federal job. Yes, there are people who have two jobs. And they seem to be quite happy because they have the best of both worlds. They're getting their fill in the thing that they want to be involved in, and they're building massive federal benefits with the golden handcuffs that keep them as a federal employee. I hope that this class was useful for you guys in making your decisions. As always, I want to give a shout out to the people who support me and motivate me, keep me going. Those are my clients and my members. If anybody here wants to become a client or a member, you could request a complimentary consult by clicking the button on the right side of the screen. I just published a button, and on the side of the screen, you can request a complimentary one-on-one consultation with either myself or a member of my team. And we will schedule an appointment with you guys, and we could discuss whether it's leaving federal service early or whether it's going the full distance, and we can discuss all the federal benefits. You can request that complimentary consult right now. So go ahead, click on that button. It'll take you to a web form. You can fill out the web form and request the complimentary one-on-one. Now, I know some of you are not ready to become clients. Some of you are not ready to become members, but you still want to say thank you in some way. Well, good news. Instead of becoming a client, instead of becoming a member, the new way that people are saying thank you for the content that I put out is by buying me a smoothie. I'm not joking about this. As I mentioned before, the funny story is when people say, thank you, this is Stefan, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I buy you lunch? And my diet is very restrictive and coffee doesn't always agree with my stomach. So I say, listen, I can't really eat so many foods, and coffee doesn't always work with my stomach, but there is something that I do appreciate, and that is smoothies. So I have a number of smoothie subscribers, people who support my smoothie habit. And let me share with you something which I just discovered today. I just discovered that, and you're not even going to believe me when I say this, I just discovered that tomorrow is National Smoothie Day. I couldn't believe it. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I definitely have to mention this in my webinars. Tomorrow is National Smoothie Day. So if anybody here wants to say a thank you to me, they could become a smoothie supporter by clicking the button that I just published on the right side of the screen. Last month's webinar, we had a bunch of people that said, Stefan, thank you so much. They actually said, they sent me an email saying thank you. And then they clicked on the smoothie supporter button and they became a smoothie supporter. And again, tomorrow is National Smoothie Day. I think that's what it's National Smoothie Day. So this will be a great time to support my drinking habit. My drinking habit, meaning my smoothie habit. It's just another way of saying thank you. But again, that's for the people who don't want to become members and don't want to be clients. You can still say thank you by buying my smoothie. So anybody here is interested, you could join the growing list of smoothie supporters. Click on that button right now. and say your thank yous with the smoothie. However, others, if you are interested in becoming a client or a member, you can request a complimentary consult, and I'll show you guys how to do so. Okay. So first, I'm gonna put this in the chat box. If anybody here wants to become a smoothie supporter, here is the link to become a smoothie supporter. 1, 2, 3 in the chat box. Bang. Okay. But then let me go back to my other offer, the other offer of the one-on-one, a complimentary one-on-one. If anybody here is interested in requesting a complimentary one-on-one, so you could actually fill out this form. I'm going to put this link in the chat box as well. Here it comes in the chat box. Here it comes. 1, 2, 3, and bang. I just shared with you guys 2 links in the chat box. So hopefully between those 2 links, you'll become a supporter. You'll also become a client and a member. As I said, this is stuff that I do every month, these webinars. But then in between webinars, I'm meeting with federal employees, people who want to organize, strategize, maximize their financial lives. And I encourage you guys to do so. The sooner, the better. Now, let me turn my attention to the chat box because I see I have a few questions waiting for me in the chat box. Sean has a question. Do you recommend the spouse option for 2 lives payout? So I think Sean is asking, do I recommend a survivor benefit? Sean, that's a great question. Let me try to answer that question as best I can. The survivor benefit is a form of life insurance. That's what the survivor benefit is. The way the survivor benefit works is while you're alive, you pay money so that when you die, someone gets a financial benefit. That is life insurance. So Sean, do I recommend that somebody leave a survivor benefit? Does somebody leave life insurance? And the answer is, it depends. Do you even need life insurance? There are many people that do not need life insurance because it could be that even when they pass away, their spouse is just fine with whatever resources are left over. It could be that the spouse has their own investments. It could be your spouse is going to get your TSB. It could be your spouse has their own pension from their job. It just could be that your spouse has enough resources and their expenses are relatively low. They may be able to survive without your survivor benefit. And Sean, to continue your question, even if your spouse needs a survivor benefit, do they need the maximum? Do they need the partial? So that is a very good question. So the answer, Sean, is going to be it depends. I see Paul has a question. MRA plus 30 and under 62. The annuity formula is 1% of average high 3 times 30 years. Correct. At 62, 1% increase to 1.1. Paul, you are saying that is exactly correct. Okay. Pauline is asking, I would love to be a smoothie supporter. Do you have an EFT account? So Pauline, I just have the method that I shared in the chat box. So that link, if you could click on that link, Pauline, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Lolita has a question. I know you probably can't tell us, but I would love to know why who those dysfunctional agencies are. By the way, I have, listen to this, Lolita. I actually have the email already written because I have so many people ask me, Stefan, who are those dysfunctional agencies? So here's my answer. I do not say the information out loud because I feel I'll be bad-mouthing. I will only send it to somebody who is seriously looking at for something that they're going to actually act upon. Meaning if this is just, gossip, I'm not gossiping. I'm not calling dysfunctional agencies dysfunctional just for the fun of gossiping. But if somebody is very interested, you can send me an email and I will send you an email back as to which dysfunctional agencies they are. Again, this is only for real benefit. This is not just for the sake of gossiping. So send me an email and I will respond. I already have the email pre-written. So Benita is asking, what if you have MRA plus 30 under 62? With immediate pension, what is the penalty? So Benita, good question, right? If you are MRA and you have 30 years of service, you could retire at 57 or at MRA. You could retire at MRA. There's no penalty. There is no penalty. So Benita, I hope I'm understanding your question, but there is no penalty. Laura has a question. What about leaving federal service temporarily with the intention of returning later in your career? So Laura, if you leave federal service and then later in your career you're going to return, I would probably tell you just keep your first contributions in the system. And then when you come back, you'll continue to build your pension. I'm not against that, Laura, but just understand that those years that you're spending outside the federal government, those years could have been building your federal pension, TSB. And since you left federal government for those few years, you're not building your pension, you're not building your TSB for those years. So it's not the end of the world, Laura, but just, you have to measure it, especially in terms of the dollars and cents that we spoke about. Okay. Tom is not building an empire, but it's a nice little kingdom. Very good, Tom. Okay. Okay. Thank goodness. Amazing stuff, guys. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I see William has a question. At retirement, does unused sick leave go towards service time? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. With MRA plus 10, yes, it does. Jeff Winnick, can you talk about the high 3 salary? What is required to lock that in? So, Jeff, really, the way it works is you almost going to look at your average salary over the last 36 months of your career. It doesn't go by calendar year. It just goes from the month you retire, go backwards 36 months. And whatever your average salary is. So, Jeff, it could be that you had a pay increase for just 1 month and then you retired. So how is that 1 month pay increase going to increase your average salary? So that whatever your salary was for that month is going to be one of 36 months. So in order for that new salary level to have a bigger impact in your high 3, you have to be at that level for an extended period of time. So if you're at that level for 1 month of 36 months, it's only going to have 1/36 of a weighting in your average. If you're at that level for, let's say, 6 months, it's going to have a weighting of 6/36 or 1/6 of your overall average. Okay. Fantastic. Once again, I want to say thank you to my clients, my members, and my smoothie supporters. I encourage everybody here to become a smoothie supporter today. And I also encourage you guys to request your complimentary consult. You can meet with me or a member of my team, and we could talk about federal benefits, retirement, and put you guys on a strong path to organize, strategize, and maximize your federal benefits and your financial lives. I hope you enjoyed today's class. I look forward to seeing you on future classes. All the best, everybody. All the best.